got back then his promise to be the greatest environmental president.
That's why I was shocked when his solution was cap and trade. He was like, we got to do more capitalism to save the planet, to make sure that we're doing a capitalist way of saving the planet. I was like, bro, you are literally an environmental activist. What the f are you saying, dude? RFK Jr. Last week tonight, John Oliver made an RFK Jr. video.
We're going to dive straight in with our main story tonight, the 2024 election. It's probably one of the last stories you want us to cover right now, below hippo hemorrhoids, but above your parents' sex life. Long story short, they tried wheelbarrow. That's how your dad hurt his hip. There's obviously a lot of talk about these two candidates right now, but we're going to focus on the person currently polling third, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Voters have learned a lot about RFK recently from the fact his distinctive voice is caused by a condition.
Don't worry, after this, I'm going to talk about the bear story, which I believe is not a part of this story.
Called spasmodic dysphonia, to the news that doctors once found a dead worm in his brain, to even his physical fitness routine, which he's put front and centre in ads like this.
I go to the gym every day. I hike every day.
I love this because, like, he just objectively sounds unhealthy. Like, people are so nice about it. I'm not. Like, I've made fun of his voice quite a bit because, like, he's supposed to be a pillar of health. Like, that's how he presents himself as. And then he just sounds like he's dying all the time.
I don't ever eat processed food. I do intermittent fasting.
Cool. To be honest, that looks less like a campaign ad and more like the dating profile of a guy who just lost custody. And while it's a bit weird to be working out in jeans, from one jock...
Why are you ignoring mass bans targeting protests and further marginalizing disabled people? Because I hate disabled people, and more than that, I hate protesters. That's why I'm ignoring it. Bro, do you guys have, like, genuine mental illness? Like, what's going on? You just can't ask, like, you can't ask a question in a normal way? Like, why is there always some cynical purpose, you think? I don't know. Could it be that there's, like, a million different things going on, and I haven't really gotten around to it? Like, could that be the reason, you think? Or you think there's, like, an actual reason, like a secret reason why I'm ignoring? Why are you ignoring? Like, why can't you say, hey, Hasan, have you heard about the new bill that's being passed that targets protesters and harms disabled people? Like, have you thought about maybe writing that in the chat? You're a 7-month subscriber. Like, do you think for the past 7 months you've subscribed to a guy who just, like, genuinely hates protesters and also the disabled? Why do you, like, I get it. The world is an uphill battle at every day, at every waking moment. Okay. Especially if you're a disability activist. Okay. Like, you get dunked on a lot. A lot of people just, like, disparage your movement. A lot of people don't think that you're, like, valuable to society. So the question is, like, I get the frustration and the resentment, but, like, why have you been supporting me? If you think that I have some secret initiative, it's just so strange. I just don't get it. I really don't understand it. Like, I get why people are uncharitable towards streamers. Okay. It is a patently unjust society, and streamers, myself included, sit around on their asses and collect dollar bills. Okay. But, like, why the fuck are my fans doing this to me? No, that's fair. It seems like you call out people in chat who are contentious not to ask nicely. So I'm trying other things to try and let people in this community know what's going on. Okay, don't do that. It's annoying.
To another, I get it. You got to put in the time and work to get our kind of body, right? Around the gym, I'm known as John Oliver Esquire because I always have permission to approach the bench. Is this HGTV? Because I'm all games. Call me the third little pig because I'm building...
Speech impediment equals unhealthy is a pretty lame take, though. Nah, I don't give a f. He's literally anti-medicine. Yeah, no. If you're anti-medicine while also simultaneously taking TRT, while simultaneously you're, like, anti-vax and anti-medicine in general, and you have brain worms, like, you should at least sound healthy, you know? And not sickly and raspy. Sorry. Like, Sorry, the optics don't work for me on that one, okay? I'm a lizard brain. Yeah, speech impediment equals the vocal cords of a 6,000-year-old mummy.
Building a brick house.
He bagged the baddie anyway. He's doing all right.
Kennedy's campaign has really leaned into his quirkiness, offering supporters the chance to win things like go whale watching with RFK Jr. and his wife Cheryl Hines, or win a day of falconry with RFK Jr.
Okay, that was a banger, though. That's actually sick.
Featuring this image of him and a falcon that looks like they're asking you to be their third. And he's attracted a broad base of supporters, with polls finding there isn't a single issue or topic that seems to unify RFK voters who can be drawn to him for all sorts of reasons.
He's an honest candidate. He's very truthful.
The Kennedys are really royalty in this country because they do the right thing.
His family has always been into the rights for the underprivileged.
He's coming to all voters and saying that if you vote for me, like, you'll be able to afford to buy a house.
He's anti-establishment without all the baggage. You know, he's going to restore trust and transparency to our federal institutions because he's a man of integrity, he has honor, and he's honest.
Yeah, people like him for a bunch of reasons, although calling a Kennedy anti-establishment is a stretch. It's like calling the Windsors anti-hat. That's just not true. The Kennedys are the very definition of the establishment, and the Windsors are famously hat. But the thing most people know about RFK is that he's often called a conspiracy theorist. It's a charge brought up so often, he was able to read off a list of insults in this ad.
He's a walking, talking conspiracy theory, the New York Times. He's completely divorced from reality, The Guardian. He is vile, the White House. Being with him was the low point of my summer, Vanity Fair. He has conversations with dead people, The Guardian. I wouldn't vote for that guy either.
I mean, that's pretty likeable. And kudos to Vanity Fair for not soft-peddling it with vile or divorced from reality and instead going straight for the jugular with, this guy's vibe is so bad, it was the low point of my summer. That is genuinely so mean, and I could not respect it more. But despite that, RFK is currently polling around 6%, and in some crucial swing states, like Michigan, he could tip the balance, especially given, as of taping, Trump and Harris are neck and neck there, and RFK is polling close to 7%. And to quote absolutely nobody from Hillary's 2016 campaign, we should be worried about Michigan. So if he is this popular and has the potential to have this much influence, tonight let's talk about RFK Jr. Let's start with the obvious. He is, first and foremost, a Kennedy. His uncle JFK was the 35th president who, as history buffs may know, was assassinated in 1963. 5 years later, his dad was also assassinated when Kennedy was just 14 years old. In his teens and 20s, he struggled with drug addiction, but in 1983, he got sober and soon became the chief prosecuting attorney for what would become the environmentalist group Riverkeeper, kicking off a career doing some genuinely laudable work, railing against fracking, Hudson River pollution, and greedy corporations poisoning...
And also friend to Uncle Cedar at the time when he was doing this work. He was actually, I mean, I've talked about this way, way back in the day, but like his background is crazy because he actually was kind of dope.
Natural resources. That is why New York Magazine called him the Kennedy who matters, and Time named him a hero for the planet. And as a candidate, he tried to tap into the liberal credibility that his work got back then. He's promised to be the greatest environmental president.
That's why I was shocked when his solution was cap and trade. He was like, we got to do more capitalism to save the planet, to make sure that we're doing a capitalist way of saving the planet. I was like, bro, you are literally an environmental activist. What the f are you saying, dude?
In American history, and has talked about a bunch of things that we've covered, like so-called forever chemicals, or PFAS, and the proliferation of microplastics. You know, all the fun stuff that you expect from our comedy show. Which at this point should probably be called You Have Already Been Poisoned with the Duolingo Owl's Biological Uncle. And it's not just that. He's also proposed raising the minimum wage to $15 and making student debt dischargeable via bankruptcy. And if I ended this piece right now, it'd honestly be a pretty good ad for RFK Jr. But unfortunately, there's a lot more to say. And let's start with his other policy proposals, because some are too...
By the way, this is why I always say RFK is for people who are like, I love the generic Democrat, including but not limited to like issues that pertain to Israel. But I think medication is poison. Okay? RFK on his policy papers is literally the most dialed into the Democratic Party. He is a straight ticket Dem. Okay? Except he thinks medication is poison, which is so awesome because there are a lot of people who apparently are like, no, I love that. And it's surprising because a lot more of those people are on the Republican ticket, which blows my mind. Like, he is just a regular ass Dem, bro. He is just a regular Democrat who thinks medication is poison. Okay. So why the fuck are so many Republicans going, yeah, I love all of his policies. He's anti-establishment. Much to think about the Democratic Party's policies broadly and the way that they are received when it's seemingly not coming from a Democrat.
To put it mildly, underbaked. One of his marquee promises is offering first-time homebuyers a 3% mortgage rate funded by tax-free government-issued bonds. Here he is describing the plan, and see how far he gets into his pitch before you start hearing alarm bells.
If you have a rich uncle who will co-sign your mortgage, you can get a much better rate. I'm going to give everybody a rich uncle, all these young people, which is Uncle Sam, which is going to guarantee your mortgage, so to allow you to get that 3% rate. And if you default on it, you know, we will inherit, the federal government will inherit. This is how Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae operated.
Right, he's suggesting giving low-interest home loans to buyers with bad credit, guaranteed by Fannie and Freddie. An idea with no bad historical precedents. What?
That's never happened. We should try it. Brilliant take, man.
Whatsoever. And if you're wondering, doesn't that guy remember 2008? I don't know, but I should point out they didn't find the worm until 2010, so he might actually have an amazing excuse there. But not fully thinking through policies is just the beginning here, because
my mom will probably end up voting for RFK. What do I do? Let her. That's awesome.
You should know RFK is also a lot more right-wing on certain issues than you might assume. On immigration, he's endorsed Trump's Remain in Mexico policy and pledged to finish the wall. And on Gaza, he's repeatedly opposed a ceasefire.
Oh, that's crazy. Praised the Remain in Mexico policy and pledged to finish the wall. So a Democrat so far. So that's cool. Okay, let's continue.
Deal compared the war there to the denazification of Germany and called Palestinians
Fetterman.
Arguably the most pampered people by international aid organizations in the history of the world. And it seems you can...
That's why it's so funny when people are like, he's the anti-establishment pig. He's so woke. He's so base. He's like, bro, what are you saying? More disabled John Fetterman. Hey, as far as we know, John Fetterman, no brain worms. RFK, well, now no brain worms, but the brain did eat a piece of his, the worm did eat a piece of his brain.
Say any stupid thing if you just put the word arguably in front of it. Arguably, Boeing is having a great year. I mean, it isn't, but you could argue it and then lose that argument. But it's not just policy where Kennedy might not be who you want him to be. He's also admitted to flying on Epstein's private jet. And
dude, that's my... Okay, this is, bar none, my favorite RFK trope. It is the fact that absolutely zero people ask him of these things, and he voluntarily reveals the most insane about him. Like, he'll just go on Fox. That was like one of the first things he did. He went on Fox News and was like, at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, and I'm serving that to you right now, unless you subscribe. If you subscribe for $6, it used to be $5, but now I'm forcing you to subscribe for $6. You could still use a free one in the form of a Twitch Prime. You could also get gifted a sub if you are lucky. COVID was created in a lab by Ashkenazi Jews in collaboration with the Chinese. He said that too. Zikvubur, thank you for the 5 get the subs. Evelene, thank you for the 5 get the subs. Allowing 10 people to no longer see that as the top of the hour. Here's the 3-minute break now.
When asked about that on a podcast, gave an answer so honest, the host seemed to feel the need to try and rescue him.
Give the context, obviously, to the Epstein thing, because you basically got out ahead of the...
So first of all, you know...
Another friend of the show on the John Oliver show before me. Messuzi B, thank you for the 5 get the subs. Andrew Schultz is on before I'm on. God damn it.
Yeah, I'm in New York for most of my life.
Yeah.
So, and you run into everybody in New York.
I mean, I knew Harvey Weinstein. I knew Roger Ailes. I knew O.J. Simpson came to my house. Bill Cosby came to my house.
You also knew...
He does this all the dang time, dude. Oh, sorry.
Good people.
Yeah, I did know a lot of them, but, you know, you don't know these people are swamp creatures until all this stuff comes out.
I mean, sure, but that's still a who's who of 90s murderers and sex offenders there. And while there are lots of things you can shrug off with, that's just New York, I'm not sure this is one of them. Rats, that...
To be fair, Hasan could also list a few insane people who have been to his house. Who? What? No. Like, no. Grimes, maybe. XQC. Aiden Ross has never been to my house.
That's just New York. Dragging your clothing 4 blocks once a week, that's just New York. One person in your subway car talking about Jesus and another doing flips, and eventually the one doing flips accidentally kicks the one talking about Jesus. That's just New York. But having a Rolodex that turns out to be part sex offender registry, that is a you problem, Bobby. Leave the rest of us out of it. And in other personal stories, he comes off even worse. Just last month, a Vanity Fair article revealed that a former babysitter had accused him of sexual assault. And that is something you'd expect he'd have a strong denial for. But instead, what you get is this.
Listen, I've said this from the beginning. I am not a church boy. I am not running like that. I said I had a very, very rambunctious youth. I said in my announcement speech that I have so many skeletons in my closet that if they could all vote.
Bro, he also just like, that's the other thing. He's like always convulsing in a very uncomfortable manner. Like, it's not just the voice. He also just like always looks like he is, I don't know. He just looks like demons have overtaken his body at all times.
I could run for king of the world.
Okay. I'm sorry, first, not a church boy? If the implication is people affiliated with the church don't commit sexual assault, boy, do I have bad news for you and your massive Catholic family. Also, rambunctious youth is a terrible way to respond to allegations you assaulted a babysitter no matter what, but especially considering the alleged assault took place when you were 40 years old. And on top of all that, when he was asked whether more women might be coming forward, Kennedy...
HasanAbi sees his first disabled man. Bro, what are we talking about, dude? No, dude, he only has like the throat issue, okay? Like, he does not have, unless you're talking about the brainworm, what the f are you saying?
He said, we'll see what happens. And the only way that answer could be any worse if he...
That's a disability, dumbass. Yeah, but it's a very funny one, so I'm gonna keep dunking on him, okay? Like... Sorry.
Followed it up with, hey, did I tell you Bill Cosby's been to my house? Because he has. But obviously the biggest issue with RFK is his reputation as a conspiracy theorist and anti-vaxxer. And if you support him, you may think that that's been overblown. You might think, well, he went on a podcast that I listened to and he seemed totally reasonable. And he does do a lot of them. We listened to a bunch. And in doing so, we noticed an...
Yeah, no, I have seen the campaign ad that he voluntarily posted where he's surrounded with bugs, like covered in bugs. When I first saw it, I could not believe it. I saw that it was going viral again on Twitter, so that's probably the reason why a lot of people are bringing it up right now. We saw it first on TikTok. It was one of the best. Dude. This is not a post. I just got served a paid advertisement from the RFK campaign where he talks like he's dying of emphysema while covered in bugs.
Hey, everybody. This is Kathy Johnson from the Kellogg family, but now she...
Like, his face looks so weird. It literally, when I first watched it, I thought it was like a Snapchat filter.
It's a company called Organic Control, and I'm covered with... Ladybugs. They're going to eat all the aphids in my garden. And you can use these instead of pesticides. They're a lot more effective. You see, here's my peaches. And there's a little damage from the aphids on the leaf. She also has beneficial nematodes, which restores your soil. And this is what we all should be doing.
Instead of pesticides, add life. Always add life to your soil.
Like, I don't even necessarily disagree with what he's talking about in terms of like pesticides and but like, he is the worst messenger for any message, but especially issues that pertain to public health. Okay. He is a uniquely bad messenger for issues that pertain to best practices and standards that pertain to the human diet or what we are putting in our bodies. Just things that like overall touch on public health in general. One question one must ask themselves is, why is he the only one covered with the ladybugs? The ladybug lady is not covered with ladybugs. It's only him. Is it perhaps something, is it perhaps a quality that he has? Like, I don't know, like maybe he's dead and only being kept alive by the power of necromancy that we just seemingly have forgotten, like a lost art. So the bugs are not reading him as like organic human relevant. Practically sprinting to the voting booth.
To your soil, above the soil, below the soil. Add life. Don't consistently.
They're going in your ear, man. What is going on?
Anyway, God bless you. Have a great day.
That's Joe Rogan's pick, with a whopping 6% of the vote in many key states.
Interesting pattern. On the more mainstream ones, he to seem reasonable and open-minded. In fact, he's got a line that he likes to deploy a lot in podcasts and other settings.
I have a critical mind. If somebody shows...
The only way he deviates from the Democratic Party on foreign policy is that he's like weirdly, he's just like, that's it. That's the only place where he comes across like a Republican, other than the anti-medicine thing.
Me where I got it wrong, I'll change. I'm not dug in. I'm not hard-headed in that sense. I will change my mind always if somebody confronts me with facts. If somebody shows me a fact that I'm wrong, I'm going to change my...
No, you famously don't do that.
...opinion, and I'll apologize.
That sounds pretty good. Even if show me a fact sounds like what a John Oliver action figure would say when you pull the string on his back. That and it's not sexual harassment if it's a horse. Unfortunately, history has shown him to be much more dug in than he likes to imply. And before we get to his more famous views on vaccines and COVID, you should know...
Okay, I'm now a believer that the reason why I've never made an appearance on the show is because they're like Vosh fans, I think.
They're by no means his own...
Like, they steal my talking points, but they love Vosh.
...only alarming stances. Take AIDS. It is a scientifically proven fact that AIDS is caused by HIV. But in the early 80s, people looked at the fact that it was spreading in the US and Europe, largely within the gay community, and tried to locate other factors that might be causing it. Nowadays, most people accept that those early theories were dead ends. But amazingly, as recently as 3 years ago, RFK was out there saying like this.
There's a lot of people that said it's not a virus. The virus is a passenger virus. And these people are dying mainly because of poppers. 100% of the people who of the first 1,000 who had AIDS were people who were addicted to poppers, which are known to cause Kaposi sarcoma in rats.
Dude, my man's crazy with it. He's nutty. A president should not know what poppers are. Right above that is, what's a popper? Don't worry about it. Just nod along.
And you know, they were people who were part of a gay lifestyle where they were burning the candle at both ends.
Okay, so there is a lot there, from a gay lifestyle to repeating the claim that people were dying mainly because of poppers to the notion that poppers cause Kaposi sarcoma, which, for the record, they do not. Multiple studies in humans have found that even heavy popper use showed no significant association with the risk of Kaposi sarcoma, which does make sense given that poppers are still sold everywhere in this city. I got these 3 blocks from here, as I do before every taping of this show. How else do you think I get through this? But it didn't stop there. Kennedy's also...
Poppers are, it's like a thing that you smell that apparently opens up your anus. So it makes butt sex easy. It's a muscle relaxant. For those of you who don't know. Apparently, okay, bro. Yeah, I did a poppers on, what's it called? Super Mega.
Also argue that Anthony Fauci, who at the time worked within the NIH, and other experts wanted to call HIV a virus, partly so that his agency and the pharmaceutical industry could profit from the production of AZT, which was the first drug approved by the FDA to treat HIV and AIDS. That is part of a series of arguments known as AIDS denialism, which has done real damage. One of its biggest proponents, a scientist named Peter Duesberg, actually helped persuade the South African government to forego supplying AZT to those with AIDS, a decision that's been estimated to have cost over 330,000 lives there. Yet, RFK recently wrote that Duesberg's arguments were so clean, so elegantly crafted, and so compelling. And elegantly crafted? That'd be annoying if you were writing the copy on the back of a $12 chocolate bar. But in this instance, it is just obscene. And it's not just AIDS, where Kennedy's made big, eye-catching claims that bear no resemblance to reality. Here he is last year in a Twitter Spaces chat with Elon Musk, suggesting that psychiatric drugs may be a cause of school shootings.
Prior to the introduction of Prozac, we had almost none of these events in our country, and we've never seen them in human history, where people walk into a schoolroom of children or strangers and start shooting people. There's other nations that have as many guns per capita as we do. Switzerland, the last school shooting was 21 years ago. We have one every 21 hours. The one thing that we have that's different than anybody in the world is the amount of psychiatric drugs our children are taking and our people are taking. And we need to look at that.
OK, so before we go any further, let me just say this. I also don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be debunking his arguments at length. I am so close to taking a hit of these poppers, you have no idea. But he's made so many confident assertions there, and if you leave even one unchallenged, people will think, well, maybe there's something to it. So, with that in mind, first, Prozac hit the market in 1988, and as you probably already know, there were tons of shootings and mass shootings before then, including at schools. As for the claim other countries have as many guns as we do, they just don't. US civilians have the highest rate of gun ownership.
That's like, I'm so sad, dude. I'm so sad. It's just like hearing such obvious falsehoods be delivered with such supreme confidence to a captive audience that literally just goes, yeah, no, that sounds about right. And then take home that message and then repeat it. Like, what the it honestly, it makes me go crazy. Like, this is such a clear way that the Republicans also message on virtually everything. We are actively doing harm to a ginormous chunk of the population, and the media is legitimately responsible for it. Mainstream media, they're responsible for it because they drop the ball regularly. They do a very terrible job of showcasing the truth, especially on issues that really matter, that a lot of people are paying attention to. They're playing catch up to TikTok half the time on Gaza. They did this with there was such an important, there was a necessity for a place that people could just get like objective news coverage on during COVID. Okay, they played a good role there, and so many people were just like negatively polarized already, and they just kept getting more and more negatively polarized and refused to believe the media. But I do suspect that there are a lot of like issues that people pay attention to that they recognize the media doesn't adequately cover, and that genuinely makes like less people trust the media overall.
In the world by a factor of more than 2. And as for linking school shootings to the amount of psychiatric drugs our children are taking, researchers haven't found any link between antidepressants and school shootings. In fact, one study found that over 87% of the secondary school shooters it sampled were not on psychiatric medications at the time of their attack. So multiple facts there are just plain wrong, despite how confidently he just spewed them out there. He could just as easily have pointed out the link between school shooters and milk, because you know what? A shocking number have above-average dairy intake, and ice cream in particular may contain neuroglycerides that initiate psychopathic behaviour, except none of that is true. I just made all of that up.
Yeah, except, like, you know, compelling narrative all of a sudden. There's a non-zero chance that, like, some people turn that off and now believe that.
Glycerides isn't even a word, and Lactose Quarterly isn't a magazine. But it does show just how easy it is to reel people in when you're spouting self-assured on an unchallenged platform. And if you're noticing a pattern here, that RFK will find a problem and then work backwards to point at a big, powerful entity pulling the strings. That's basically what he's done with vaccines, although, again, he will deny that, insisting he's not anti-vax at all. Here he is making that point under oath before Congress.
I have never been anti-vax. I have never told the public avoid vaccination. The only thing I've asked for, and my views are constantly misrepresented, so that the truth of what I believe is not, we're not allowed to have a conversation about that with the American people, which I believe vaccines should be tested with the same rigor as other medicines and medications.
Yeah, that's a pretty vehement denial, and quick shout out to the guy recording that like it's his kid's dance recital. When are you going to watch that footage, dude? You do know there are other cameras recording this, right? But here's the thing. Remember when I said Kennedy goes on a lot of podcasts and can sound reasonable? He goes on a bunch of fringy ones too. And when addressing those audiences, he sends out a very different message, like on this one 3 years ago.
Our job is to resist and to talk about it to everybody. I see somebody on a hiking trail with carrying a little baby, and I say to him, better not get him vaccinated. And he heard that from me. If he hears it from 10 other people, maybe he won't do it, you know?
Brave, bold, beautiful. They're so good. He's so good. He's doing the Lord's work, telling random people on hikes that they should not let their children be vaccinated.
Maybe he will save that child when they...
I'm gonna be honest, that I have the capacity to listen to this guy on a hike have a 100% chance of never vaccinating their children anyway. like if this guy walks up to you on a hike and he's like, hold up, are you carrying that baby? Is that baby vaccinated? If you're like listening to that person and not immediately hitting the fair mace, you most likely are probably not going to vaccinate your children.
You hear that from 10 people, it'll make an impression on them. You know, and you all kept our mouths shut. Don't keep your mouth shut anymore. Confront everybody on it.
I love that.
Sorry, I know bears are a touchy subject when we're talking about RFK. I haven't even gotten to that point yet.
I love it. Thank you.
I love that. I love it. I have to say, that is exactly the kind of person I'd expected to be co-hosting an anti-vaccine podcast, the sort of person you'd expect to see walking around a grocery store during a COVID surge, licking everything to fortify her immune system. But I only say that because she actually did that and posted it to Instagram, because of course she did. But also, you don't get to say, I'm not anti-vax, and then wander around the woods telling people to not vaccinate their babies like you're...
Like, what do I say to that without being ableist? Like, what do I say to that? That's just mental illness, bro. Like, that person needs medical intervention right now. I'm sorry. That's like, it's not even, I'm not even being ableist. I'm like genuinely saying like this person needs treatment. Okay. What the
some red-pilled version of Smokey the Bear, who I'm realizing is clearly where you get your workout wardrobe inspiration from. Over the years, Kennedy's promoted a number of theories about vaccines, including how they supposedly cause autism. We've discussed his claim that a preservative called thimerosal was linked to autism in our piece on vaccines several years ago. Not only is it, thimerosal hasn't been in children's vaccines since 2001, except for the flu vaccine, and even then there was and remains a version without thimerosal in it. But Kennedy parlayed the initial panic he helped cause into founding the Children's Health Defence, one of the country's leading anti-vaccine organisations, and he's continued to fearmonger about a connection between thimerosal and autism ever since. In 2015, he said of kids getting vaccinated, they get the shot, that night they have a fever of 103, they go to sleep, and 3 months later, they're...
Robert Kennedy Jr. warns of vaccine-linked Holocaust. Hello from Samoa. You're one viewer from here. RFK Jr. came here in between U.S. charged affairs appointments and stayed at the ambassador's residence. Yeah, he also won... Wait, no. Did he... Was that RFK? No. No, that was Michael Bloomberg that won Samoa, right? Wait, what did RFK do with Samoa?
Their brain is gone. This is a holocaust, what this is doing to our country, which is clearly absurd. A vaccine cannot make someone's brain go away, although I'm increasingly believing that a dead worm might actually be able to. And if you're noticing a certain cruelty in how Kennedy tends to talk about autistic people, you're not wrong. It goes well beyond the anti-vax community's general gross tendency to imply that they'd rather have a kid from polio or measles than be diagnosed with autism. Because just listen to him here.
I bet that you've never met anybody with full-blown autism your age. You know, headbanging, football.
Wait, what? Dude, what are you saying? Did he just... What? Full-blown autism doesn't exist in adults is wild, okay?
Or a helmet on, non-toiletarian, trained, non-verbal. I mean, I've never met anybody like that my age, but in my kid's age, now 1 in every 34 kids has autism, and half of those are full-blown, meaning that description.
Okay, first.
Full-blown autism. I know that the language surrounding like autism changes a little bit, right? And you might sometimes use outdated terminology, but there's never been, it is a spectrum, but I'm pretty sure no one has ever used full-blown autism. You've never met somebody who's autistic as dog. Also, Joe Rogan has met someone with full-blown autism. His name is Elon Musk. Oh, God. He talks about...
If there's limited variety in the people you've met your age, maybe it's because you've only ever hung out with the same circle of 5 or 6 sex offenders or murderers. I don't know. I am just asking questions. And I could talk about the history of autism diagnoses and how they're still so new. The first person to be given one just last year. I could talk about the fact that autistic people were long misunderstood and institutionalised. I could also throw in that there is definitely no such diagnoses as full-blown autism. Or you know what? I could just let this guy with autism point out that just because RFK didn't know anyone with autism didn't mean they didn't exist in the most delicious...
Yeah, that's kind of the point. The reason why autism diagnoses increased, and specifically for men, is not because like something changed in the diet. It's just that we became better at diagnosing autism. Not entirely. That's why I'm saying we became better for men. We still are not very good at diagnosing autism for women, which is precisely the reason why it mostly skyrocketed in men, and not necessarily in women. Oh, that's all this is. This is crazy. I gave Kaya a massive, how did you know that? I've worked with children, with boys specifically with autism. I used to work with Autism Speaks, as a matter of fact, before it was understandably criticized for being a chaotic institution. It's also why I work with chat really well. Found why the steak clip farmers are up your ass today? Oh, yeah. Anyway, let's continue.
Derisive way.
Mount Everest wasn't discovered until 1852, but I'm pretty sure it was still there. Also, yeah, like all those old grandpas with like a giant-ass train collection. You don't think they're just a little bit on the spectrum? Just a teeny weeny... God, conspiracy theorists are the dumbest people on the planet.
Yeah.
Bar none.
In my experience, one of the things I did observe, however, and I guess I have some kooky takes. I've talked about this before. Like, it's like one of my most controversial takes on autism is that I'm a firm believer in like mixed education. From my experience with children with autism, with boys with autism, their parents 100p. Their dads were so autistic, bro. But like they just did not know it, like at all, and you could just tell that like their dad definitely was autistic. And I think like part of that, like I'm not saying learn to mask, obviously, but like I think growing up in a diverse learning environment rather than like being sheltered in that sort, I think caused a lot of, my estimation at least, caused a lot of those dads to figure out ways in which they can like still socialize, and I think that improved their ability to socialize in general. And as far as like how to deal with bullies goes, yeah, you beat the shit out of the bullies. What do you mean? Easy. Okay, I'm joking. I'm not an advocate for corporal punishment as someone who was victim to it quite a bit when I was growing up in Turkey. But like, I do think that like a diverse learning environment instead of like a sheltered learning environment, like a mixed learning environment, is probably more beneficial for young kids with autism, because it kind of, that doesn't mean no safe spaces, man. What the no, that probably necessitates safe spaces even more. But having said that, I think overall Gen Pop in that situation, I think causes people to most likely, sometimes by force, but still causes people to develop better social skills in general. Like,
yeah, I honestly cannot put it much better than that. And look, RFK will insist he just wants vaccines to be tested for safety and efficacy. But as we have said before, they have been, and repeatedly. Not only are vaccines already held to a higher safety standard than other...
Hold on, are autistic kids taught separately in the USA? No, but depending on the severity, like, because it's a spectrum, I think like a lot of, what is it? Like, what's the proper way to call it now? It's like, back in my day, it used to be called non-socially functioning, I think. Like there's a, now it's called high support needs, low support needs. Yes. So there's like high support needs autism, and that is like that gets to a point where like you definitely need like extra care and attention. But I still think like across the board, it should still be like teachers should get teachers should get like the proper training to be able to deal with such situations and still put every single person in a mixed learning environment. Yeah. In the words of RFK Jr., full-blown autism.
Medications, thousands of studies have found that they're safe and effective, including a systematic review of over 160 studies on vaccine safety that found any serious adverse reactions were extremely rare. You could also look at this study of over 650,000 children born in Denmark, some vaccinated, some not, which concludes that the MMR vaccination does not increase the risk for autism, or this meta-review of 10 studies involving over 1.25 million children, which also revealed no relationship between vaccination and autism. There are so many examples like this. And it's why experts will tell you that a person's chance of having a bad reaction to a vaccine is about 1 in a million. As one expert we spoke to pointed out, given that we have over 40,000 deaths by car accident in the US per year, the most dangerous aspect of vaccinating children is driving to the doctor's office to get them. Especially, by the way, if your kids are singing Baby Shark the whole time, because that will make you drive off a cliff. And I know this can all seem very abstract, but the thing is, Kennedy's ideas have been put to the test in the real world, and sometimes with hideous consequences. Take what happened in Samoa. In 2018, there was a horrible accident when 2 children from a measles vaccine that 2 nurses had incorrectly mixed with a muscle relaxant. It was awful, but it was human error. Nevertheless, the anti-vax movement seized on the sudden fear of vaccines there. In the following year, Kennedy visited Samoa in a trip arranged by a local anti-vaccine influencer. There, he met with other anti-vaccine activists, including one who wrote that the meeting was profoundly monumental for this movement. He even met with the Prime Minister, with whom he discussed vaccines, in his words, a limited amount. And when a few months later there was a measles outbreak in Samoa, RFK wrote a 4-page letter to the Prime Minister in which he suggested the measles vaccine itself might be the true cause of the crisis. In the end, that outbreak, 83 people, mostly infants and children, in large part due to their lack of vaccinations, an outbreak Kennedy later referred to as mild. And when confronted about all of this, he is quick to try and distance himself.
Yeah, I'm aware there was a measles outbreak, but I didn't have anything, I had nothing to do with people not vaccinating in Samoa. I never told anybody not to vaccinate. I didn't, go there for any reason to do.
I didn't have anything to do with the measles outbreak in Samoa shirt is bringing up a lot more questions that could simply be answered by just reading the shirt. It's like, it's insane.
With that.
Got it, got it. So you just popped in to one of the most remote countries on Earth and just happened to encounter all your anti-vax buddies along the way. It is the ultimate conspiracist code. Nothing is a coincidence except when I do it. And look, on some level, I do get why people are drawn to RFK. There is an earned distrust of big pharma and medical authorities, and illnesses and disease are scary. Kennedy's explanations, as they may be, can almost be comforting at a frightening time. That is an environment in which he thrives. And it may explain why his popularity took off during the COVID pandemic. There was a lot of uncertainty back then, and medical experts were understandably making mistakes and learning in real time. Kennedy saw that, and he pounced. He took a lot of big swings, including writing a book in which he claimed that Fauci was using COVID to execute a historic coup d'etat against Western democracy. And once again, his just asking questions caused real harm to real people. For example, he pushed the idea that the COVID vaccine was dangerous, especially to young people, even writing the forwards to this book called Cause Unknown, The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 2021 and 2022, a compilation of young people who suddenly, heavily implying their deaths were caused by the vaccine. And look, it is true that a very few young people reported heart complications after receiving the vaccine. But not only is the risk rare, and most patients felt better quickly, but importantly, in children and teens, the risks of getting COVID and developing severe illness that could seriously impact the heart are far greater than the risk of experiencing post-vaccine heart complications. Nevertheless, in that book's forward, RFK wrote that it proves an undeniable and urgent reality, laid out with facts that can be confirmed by any reader, point by point, page by page. He even went on Joe Rogan to give the book a hard sell.
It's the kind of book, if you have a skeptic and you can get them to sit down for 90 minutes with this book, when they get up, they will have converted. And it's really, it's sickening.
Shit like this makes me go full, like, Chinese-style repression of information. Like, I don't know what the best way to deal with it is. I think, like, a solid foundation in education is probably the best way to deal with it. But, like, barring that, I would just, you know, send that man to a re-education camp. Interesting you say that, because he has advocated for re-education camps, kind of.
I mean, it's terrible. These beautiful children who were dying on the playing field, and COVID was people, but it was old people, yeah.
Cause unknown, the epidemic of sudden deaths in 2021 and 2022. Edward Dowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. After first vaccine dose, in hospital, football in the field.
OK, set aside that Joe Rogan's just muttering random words off the cover with an energy level I describe as just ate a fistful of melatonin pills. That is a pretty hard sell there from RFK. Give this book to people for 90 minutes and they'll be converted. But here's the thing. The AP found that dozens of individuals included in the book, known causes not related to vaccines, include smoking while intoxicated. The book even includes one person who died in 2019. So unless the headline was time traveller COVID vaccine, they don't really belong in there. But that's not all. Because when the book was first printed, one of the kids on the cover was Braden Fahey, who died after collapsing during football practice at just 12 years old. But we know for a fact that the COVID vaccine didn't kill Braden because he wasn't vaccinated. He'd from a malformed blood vessel in his brain, and no one ever contacted his parents to ask about their son's death or for permission to use his photo. Something they are understandably furious about.
It's just another gut punch. Yeah. You know, we've been punched in the gut as hard as you can be punched in the gut, and this is just another one right after, you know?
You try so hard each day to, like, heal, and then you just have to take on a whole other nightmare, and part of you wants to just dismiss it and go, we've dealt with so much, we can't deal with anymore. But then you know you just have to do it for your son, and we can't as his parents look the other way.
That is awful. They've had to go out of their way to correct the record about their son's death in the face of someone who not only has the platform of a Kennedy, but also of a presidential candidate. Now, I should tell you, after that story, Braden was removed from the cover of subsequent editions of that book. But not only is the first version with him on the cover still selling on Amazon, even the newer edition, despite everything we just told you, still includes him inside the book itself. And the publisher's excuse for this is enraging, because they argue to us this week that the book never specifically says that the people shown in it from the COVID vaccine, just that it highlights a new trend of people dying suddenly for unknown causes, which is not what the book does at all. And it is definitely not what RFK did when he tweeted out its cover with Braden's picture on it and claimed the book showed the COVID shots are a crime against humanity. That tweet is still up, which is a little odd to me because what was it that Kennedy liked?
This was a huge thing on Twitter for a while. Vultures were stalking death announcement tweets and then reposting them with screenshots of the person who wearing a mask and getting vaccinated. Yeah. It's mental illness. Like, it's just like genuinely you become such a loyalist. You become like pathologically obsessed with like proving this argument and you just go further and further into this pit of despair and you do increasingly more unhinged. The suddenly stuff was really, really up.
Like to say,
if somebody shows me a fact and I'm wrong, I'm gonna.
It's like turf brain, you know. It's like turf brain, transphobia, anti-vaxxer sentiment. There's like stages to it, right? There are stages to it, different stages of this like mental illness, and anti-vaxxers just like go so deep into the pocket.
To change my opinion, and I'll apologize.
Huh, that's weird, but I guess it does make sense. Saying if somebody shows me a fact and I'm wrong, I'm going to totally ignore it and force grieving parents to relive the worst thing that's ever happened to them doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it? And look, I could litigate Kennedy's stupid arguments all night long, but I really do not want to do that to myself or to you. There are not enough...
Transphobia is very legit. No, like anti-vaxxers and transphobes exhibit the same tendencies of like refusing to listen to the science, wanting to interfere between this private relationship between a patient and a doctor, like a medical health care professional who knows best, right? Like it's anti-science paired up with like a really unhealthy dose of narcissism, hyper-individualism, thinking that you know everything and society is just like lying to you. And the more, like once you go down that rabbit hole, I feel like it's very, very hard to deprogram the cult deprogramming to kick in. Oh, I think Chatter means transphobia is a legit mental illness, or is he saying trans people are mentally ill or something? I don't know. I don't know what that guy was saying. I didn't even read it like that. I just read it as like that guy was saying being transphobic is a legitimate mental illness. See, look, trans people are normal. Haters, sir, are broken. What?
Enough poppers in the world to take the edge off this. And to quote Kennedy's neurologist, I really don't have time to go down all these wormholes. Hopefully, though, at this point, you've got a better sense of who this man actually is. And if you don't know any of this, I do get why you might like him. Because the idea of RFK is appealing. But so many of the reasons to support him just don't stand up under the slightest scrutiny. If you're voting for him because he seems honest or trustworthy, I think you've seen otherwise. If it's the Kennedy legacy, you should know over a dozen members of his own family have come out against his campaign. If you're voting for the environmental hero of the 90s, I'll point out multiple prominent environmental groups have opposed his campaign, including many former colleagues. If you like that he's against polluters and Big Pharma, I get it. We criticise them all the time. But when we do that, we make sure we've got our facts right and don't just pull them out of the arse of our best workout jeans. And finally, if you're frustrated with a two-party system, me too. But honestly, the way to dismantle that isn't through voting for one magical candidate. It'll come from building a movement toward ranked choice voting. And it's important to know, at least one of those parties may not be as opposed to Kennedy as he says he is to them, because Republicans seem to be counting on him to siphon off Democratic votes.
Except it's not working. It's siphoning Republican votes, according to the polls, which is wild. And I think it shows like a priority of like how voters operate, where like they like Democratic Party policies, but they don't like the Democrats, let's say. So RFK is this like perfect person. If you're like invested in the anti-vax narratives and you just want like a crank that presents themselves as anti-establishment, you know, it seems like it's a better option than the Republicans.
His campaign's largest contributor is Timothy Mellon, a Republican mega-donor who's also donated $50 million to a pro-Trump group this election. And if Trump wins a second term, Kennedy may wind up working for him, because when we reached out to RFK's campaign this week, they told us he and Trump have discussed the possibility of a cabinet position for him, specifically health and human services. And if that is true, that is a nightmare. There is no good outcome here. Even if RFK drops out tomorrow, he'll have injected and amplified misinformation that, as you've seen, takes a lot of effort to debunk.
My favorite thing that people do with guys like this is that they will always point at like some of the very reasonable takes that RFK will have to be like, well, he also thinks you should eat clean. And it's like, dude, there's a million people who think that. I think that. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same phenomena that people used to do with like Andrew Tate. They'd be like, oh, well, he just wants people to work out. It's like, bro, I want people to work out. What are you talking about? You know? Like, people aren't going to Andrew Tate because he's promoting a workout lifestyle, okay? Like, they're going to him for all the other shit people are yelling at him about. Just like people aren't going to Jordan Peterson because he said, clean your room. It's all the other shit. There's a million people that can tell you that you should clean your room, including your parents.
And if he stays in, history has shown spoiler candidates can do intense damage to no real end. And don't just take that from me. Ralph Nader famously helped swing the election for George W. Bush back in 2000. And there was a guy back then who was very smartly imploring him to drop out.
Despite fading poll numbers, the core support behind Nader's candidacy is making some liberal Democrats.
It will never make me hate you, Nader.
Unhappy.
There's a political reality here, which is that his candidacy could draw enough votes in certain key states from Al Gore to give the entire election to George W. Bush.
Exactly. And look, this is the only time you're going to hear me say this, but RFK is, and don't you dare take this out of context, making a really good point there. But the fact is, the rest of the time, Kennedy...
Ralph Nader's my goat.
...is a full-blown menace.
Ralph Nader's my goat. George W. Bush stole the election. Democrats should have been fighting harder. They didn't.
And frankly, spending this much time thinking about him has been, if I may quote Vanity Fair, the low point of my summer. And now, if you'll excuse me, I think I have earned these.
Trouble in Beastland?
Okay, so Mr. Beast has a lot of stuff going on. I can't believe Legal Eagle, the legal team, the Eagle team, actually came up with illegal rigging, lotteries, and NDAs. This comes on the heels of the first, what is it, like dog walk?